Mikami Satoru is a 37-year-old average Joe living a decent and uneventful life in present-day Tokyo, and his biggest achievement is that he still has not lost his virginity. He obviously feels a little jealous when his office junior introduces him to his charming fiancé, and they want to take him out for lunch to celebrate their engagement. But just then, a crazed attacker runs towards them with a sharp knife, and Satoru pushes his junior out of harm's way only to end up getting stabbed at a vital point. The blood loss is severe and makes him feel hot. He says that he does not want it, and suddenly a voice inside his head replies that it understood the instructions and that he has been given heat resistance now. He does not have any idea about what's going on, and as he thinks about all the things he does not want, he gets resistance against them. The voice tells him that he is now resistant to stabbing and other physical damage, pain, and even cold. The newly acquired cold resistance combines with heat resistance and becomes thermal fluctuation resistance. But as Satoru realizes that he is definitely going to die, he tells his junior to destroy the hard disk in his personal computer. Our dude has got his priorities straight. He still regrets that he was going to die a virgin. If he gets a chance to be reborn, he wants to be more aggressive and go after every girl he sees. The voice in his head hears him and gives him the unique skill Predator, just not the kind of predator you see on the news. It seems losing too much blood has made Satoru delirious, and he says that if someone was a virgin at his age, he should be compared to a sage, and he had the potential to be a great sage. The voice hears him yet again and gives him the unique skill, Great Sage. Going by this logic, even I deserve to be called a sage. Where's my skill? Satoru finally has a moment to notice the voice in his head and tells it to shut up and give him a moment's peace. But he has finally lost the last bits of his HP, and now it is game over. But then a new life starts for him, one a world he has no idea about. A world full of magic, monsters, mythic beasts, and things far beyond what he could imagine is around him. But right now, our hero cannot even see anything and wonders where he is. He wonders what happened. The last thing he remembered was hearing a voice in his head. And then he remembered that he was already dead. But that is not enough for him to lose his cool. The only time he panicked was when he crapped his pants in grade school. I had a friend who did the same thing, but in high school, and he did not return to school after that day. He has reincarnated as a slime and is in a cave right now. But it takes him some trial and error to recognize his fate because he has almost no senses except touch. The biggest clues to his condition are the fact that a plant just dissolves and permeates inside his body as soon as he touches it, and that his body is now formless, elastic, and bouncy. The moment he confirms that he is slime, he is quite dejected, but he gets used to it pretty quickly. His new body is quite convenient as he does not need to eat or sleep, but eats a lot of plants he can find around him, solely because there is nothing else to do. But he does not excrete anything and wonders where all the food is going. He gets an answer from the voice inside his head. It went into his limitless stomach, which was a part of his unique skill, Predator. He learns that the voice is the effect of his second unique skill, Great Sage, which is basically like his Alexa, and that is what we are going to call it. He learns about the skill Predator, using which he can eat anything, analyze and absorb its skills, and also mimic its appearance. He tests it out on the plants he just ate and learns that they were called the hippocute herb, which grows only in areas rich in magicules and was used as an ingredient in healing potions. Our hero asks the Great Sage or Alexa to explain magicules to him like he is 5, and she tells him that they were the magic particles that were the building blocks of all life. He arrives at the conclusion that he can store medicine potions inside his body, which Alexa affirms. So he decides to eat every last plant in the cave and store it to use later. He then finds a glowing rock called the Magistone ore, which is quite valuable, and eats it all too. In his eating spree, he loses balance and falls into a lake, only to find that slime can't float. But thankfully, the lake is not that deep, or he might have imploded. He has a clever idea and uses water as a jet stream to propel himself, and just by doing that, he acquires a skill to do just that. He loses control and launches himself straight towards an invisible barrier. He feels the impact, but no pain, and Alexa informs him that he has pain nullification ability, but will still get damaged from impacts. But then someone calls him Little One in a deep voice and asks him if he can hear him. The slime can somehow hear him, but he can't reply because he has no mouth. Even as the stranger asks him to say something, he cannot reply and insults him inside his mind, only to find out that the stranger could hear his thoughts. This dangerous-seeming stranger is furious and roars loudly, shaking the entire cave. But his rage turns into amusement when he realizes that the little slime could not see him. The stranger tells our hero that he will give him his sight, but there are 2 conditions for that. First, he should not fear him when he sees him, and second, he will come to talk with him frequently. He only needs that because he has been sealed here for 300 years and has gotten incredibly bored alone. Well, the slime accepts his deal and the stranger tells him about magic sense. a skill he could use to detect magicules in the air. He gives it a try and can easily sense the magic, giving him the gift of vision. Alexa tells him that he has acquired the extra skill Magic Sense and explains that extra skills are much more powerful and efficient than normal skills. Now our hero can see the wonderful world around him and goes to check himself out in the lake to find that he really is slime. He goes back to see the stranger and it seems that he's going to break the first condition of their deal right away. He is terrified as he sees a majestic dragon in front of him, who formally introduces himself as the storm dragon Veldora, one of the only 4 true dragons in this world. Veldora is curious about how a slime can have self-awareness and the ability to think. Was it a unique being with extraordinary abilities? Our hero tells the dragon his story of being reincarnated as slime. Vel tells him that it is unusual for anyone to be reincarnated into this world, as human souls are not strong enough to bear the stress of transportation. But it did not mean that people from another universe did not come here. They came here along with their bodies as otherworlders and gained special abilities when they reach here. Our hero is glad to learn that he might find some compatriots here, and he thinks he should go and find them. But since this makes Vel upset, the slime decides to accompany him for a little while longer. The dragon then excitedly recites his story. 300 years ago, he burned down a city by mistake, and a human hero blessed with divine power came and defeated him. Even though Vel underestimated the hero initially, she was powerful enough to defeat him, even when he was serious. And then she used a powerful binding skill called Unlimited Imprisonment to capture him here. The hero was a summon, which was different from regular otherworlders. It took 30 powerful mages to perform a ritual over many days to summon a warrior from another world who gained extreme power. And a curse was carved into the souls of the summons so that they could not go against their summoner. Our hero thinks that this is quite cruel and learns that this world follows the principle of survival of the fittest. But then he thinks about how alone and bored he was just because he had not had a girlfriend for 37 years and Vel was alone for 300 years. His boredom and loneliness were unimaginable. And so our kind-hearted hero says that they should become friends, and the dragon turns out to be its son deer. He first roars, saying how a mere slime can try to be friends with him, but then he blushes while saying that if he insists so much, it could be considered. Luckily, our hero has understood his nature. He tells Vel that he insists on being friends with him. They shake hands and become friends, even though it is embarrassing for them to talk about it at their age. Now that they are friends, our hero feels even worse about the dragon's imprisonment, and the latter is touched. He says that he has only 100 years worth of magic left before his power runs out and he dies, and he will be grateful if the slime can help him find a way out. Our hero does not have a solid plan, so he plays it by ear and tries to devour the unlimited imprisonment using Predator, but fails. Alexa starts to check for possibilities and arrives at the conclusion that if the prison could be analyzed from both inside and outside, they may have a chance to break it. Vel can't analyze it from the inside because his skills are sealed too, but he can still give the data to the slime. But that is going to take a long time, and our hero has plans to find more otherworlders. So he gives Vel a suggestion. He says he wants him to get inside his stomach. He is already taking their bromance to new heights. His plan is to use his skill as a predator to analyze the prison from the outside, while Veldora tries to break it from the inside. And since he will be in his stomach, he will not disappear even if the prison cannot be broken. Vel is quite trusting, and he thinks that this way to break the prison with a friend sounds more fun than waiting for things to happen. But before they can get to that, he wants to give his slime friend a name which will grant him divine protection. And he wants to get a name from him in return too, as that will be like a family name engraved on their souls to prove they're equals. Vel wants a cool last name, and since he is the Storm Dragon, our hero names him Tempest, which he feels is a fantastic last name and gladly accepts it. And then he names the slime Rimuru. They are now Rimuru Tempest and Veldora Tempest, friends and equals. As soon as our hero gets his new name, he undergoes a transformation. Even though nothing physically changed, he felt like something deep inside his soul changed. Now that he has a name, he starts the plan to free Vel from his unlimited imprisonment. He stretches and gobbles up the entire prison and gives Alexa the task of analyzing it. The disappearance of the catastrophe-class monster, Veldora, shakes the world. He was imprisoned in the great forest of Jura, which houses several countries, and Rimuru does not yet know of the chaos that is spreading there due to the sudden disappearance of his friend. Now Rimuru wanders around the cave trying to find an exit while eating all the ores and plants and storing them in his belly. He plays around with water a bit and gains the skills to swim and use it as a blade. And now the 3 water-related skills he has combined to become an extra skill, water manipulation. In this way, he gains many more skills. Like a wise man has said, fool around and find out. A few days later, he finds the first living creature in this cave aside from Vel. It is a monster called the Black Serpent, and even though Rimuru is scared initially, one hit of the water blade is enough to kill the snake. After that, he eats and analyzes it to gain its skills and the ability to mimic the snake. Even though eating a monster felt disgusting, Rimuru decided to hunt more of them to gather some useful skills. He fights an armored lizard, evil centipede, and a black spider, and from the last one he gets the ability to use sticky threads and steel threads, which he uses to imitate Spider-Man and move around the cave with ease. Then he hunts a giant bat and gets the skill to use ultrasonic waves, which also gives him the ability to speak. And after many weeks of wandering the cave, Rimuru finally comes to a giant wooden door that is the exit. It suddenly opens, and he wonders if this is an automatic door, but that is not true. There are 3 adventurers here to scout the cave. Rimuru hides behind a rock and learns that they were here to investigate the increased activity of monsters after Vel's disappearance. He can understand them because of his magic sense and can even talk with them. But he gives up on communicating with them, fearing that they might turn violent. The party of the 3 adventurers turns invisible thanks to the scout's stealth skill, and as they go inside the cave, Rimuru leaves. Outside, he sees the open sky after weeks and wanders in the forest while thinking about Vel. He wants to gather many interesting stories to tell when he gets back, and the beginning of a story arrives immediately. A group of goblins appear before him. They are armed and willing to fight, but more than that, they are scared. They call Rimuru the Strong One, and when he realizes that, he greets them, not realizing that his voice is too loud until all the goblins are on their knees. They say that they know his power and implore him to turn the volume down. Rimuru asks them why they were here, and their leader replies that they came here because they sense a powerful monster, and Rimuru does not understand they were talking about him until they clearly explain things. But now that they have witnessed his strength, they ask him for a favor. They lead him to a shoddy hut in the goblin village, and the frail and weak elder of the village and his son greet Rimuru. They treated Vel as their god since he kept the monsters and other dangers away, but he suddenly disappeared a month ago, and now monsters have begun to attack them. They had no way to fight back, and that is what they want Rimuru to help them with. They are certain that he is not just a mere slime. It was not possible for anyone to believe it after seeing his aura. It is the first time Rimuru has heard about his aura, so he looks at himself using his magic sense. A really intimidating aura is emanating from him, which is intense enough to make him sweat. Now he understands why the goblins were so afraid, but he acts as if he knew it all along and was waiting for them to find him. He sucks his aura in and tells the village chief that he has potential, but that is just lip service. The chief tells him about the direwolves who attacked their village and about the group of brave goblins who fought against them. They were led by a named Goblin, who was the chief's eldest son and gave his life to deliver important information about the wolves. Rimuru learns that there are only 60 goblins capable of fighting, while the wolves are around 100. He feels pity for the goblins, but he cannot promise to help them so easily since he has to be careful about his position too. He asks the village chief what his compensation would be for saving the village. The goblins are poor and have nothing to give, so the chief bows down, saying that they can only offer their unwavering loyalty to Rimuru. He is moved and can't say no to people who have such high hopes for him. He tells the goblins that they do not need to panic. He will fight alongside them and protect them in place of his friend Veldora. The goblins are really grateful, and they bow their heads, swearing their loyalty to him. Rimuru assembles all the goblins who can fight, but there are not many promising candidates there. He tries to boost their morale and rally them, and is quite effective and makes them look cool. Then he goes to the shed where all the injured fighters are being treated. As soon as he reaches the shed, Rimuru says it's goblin time. He gobbles up the injured goblins, throws the healing potions from the herbs he ate at them, and spits them out completely healed. In this way, he heals all the injured goblins. And once again, the goblins are mesmerized by his abilities. With more allies to fight alongside, Rimuru decides to create a fence and fortify the village's defense. At night, the wolves rush to destroy the village and find goblins on watch and a makeshift fence. In front of them is Rimuru, and he tells them to retreat if they want to live another day, but the leader of the wolves underestimates him, thinking that he is just a normal slime. He orders his pack to attack the village, but they injure themselves as they run into the steel threads Rimuru had tied around the fence. The goblins shoot arrows at the injured wolves, finishing them off for good. The wolf boss notices this and rushes to end Rimuru before anyone else, but he gets caught in the sticky thread. And then, with his water blade skill, Rimuru ends his life story. He gives the rest of the wolves the option to yield or die, hoping that they will choose the first option and run away with their tails between their legs. He devours the body of their leader, acquires skills specific to wolves, and then transforms into a wolf himself. He uses the skill Menace and howls loudly, giving the wolves a chance to run away, but instead of doing that, they bow down before Rimuru and yield to him. The war is won, but now the dire wolves have also become Rimuru's underlings, quickly forgetting their differences with the goblins. The numbers of the wolves match those of the goblins, and Rimuru decides to pair them up. He wants to take up the administrative jobs too, but has trouble addressing the goblins since they do not have names. Even though the chief says that they could communicate with each other even without names, Rimuru tells them that he will name them all just for his convenience. The goblins are shocked and super excited, like they have just won the lottery. They line up before Rimuru with the chief leading the way. Rimuru learns that the name of the chief's son who died in the battle was Rigger, so he passes on that name to the second son of the chief. He also names the chief Riggard, and both the father and son are extremely grateful for this. For the rest of the goblins, he uses a simple template. He puts whatever sound comes to mind after the word gob and gives them names like Gobta, Gobchi, and so on. The goblins are very happy, and Rimuru feels guilty that he is not putting enough effort into their names. But then, the chief Riggard asks him if naming all the goblins at once was fine for Rimuru. But ignorance is bliss, and our hero thinks that there is no problem with it. The goblins are done, and it is the turn of the wolves. The first one in line is the boss's son, and Rimuru can tell from their wagging tails that none of the wolves seem to be holding a grudge against him. He names the boss's son Ranga, and then suddenly starts melting as he loses control of his body and his vision blurs. There is a steep price to pay for naming monsters. It consumed a lot of magic. This was what Riggard was about to tell him when he told him off while being blissfully ignorant. And without knowing it, Rimuru hit his limit, leading to the activation of sleep mode to recover his power. He is fully revived 3 days later, and a cute and well-endowed goblin girl greets him. Rimuru has no idea who the girl is. If there was anyone this cute in the village earlier, he would have remembered her. The girl leaves to call Riggard, and Rimuru is in for a big shock as he sees him transformed into a tall, macho goblin. He asks him what happened here, and Riggard explains that normally monsters do not have a name, and naming a monster increases its rank and causes it to evolve. As soon as he says it, Ranga storms into the room, and now he's a unicorn dog who can brew up a storm just by wagging his tail. Rimuru goes outside to find that the goblins have evolved into a new species. The male goblins have turned into hobgoblins and the females into goblinas. And even though Rimuru was named just Ranga, all the wolves have evolved because they were connected and could share the name. They are no longer dire wolves but have become tempest wolves. Now Rimuru takes charge of the village and sets 3 rules everyone has to follow. Rule number 1, no attacking humans. Rule number 2, no fighting amongst themselves. And rule number 3, no belittling other races. The first rule was especially important because humans live in huge groups, and harming them could invite fierce retaliation that not even the powerful slime could handle. After that, Rimuru delegated the responsibilities of the village and declared Riggard the Goblin Lord, who was moved to tears on hearing this. Other goblins and wolves also get the duties of guards, gatherers, and hunters. But they have serious problems with shelter and clothing. A team of goblins makes a house that crumbles moments after it is completed, and Rimuru thinks that even bird nests are sturdier than this. Also, the clothes of the goblins are too revealing, but they have no craftsman who can make them here. However, there was a race with which they had traded before, and they were quite skilled at making a variety of items. These were the dwarves of Dworgen, who were known for their legendary craftsmanship and metallurgy skills. Rimuru is super excited and decides to contact them, and for that, he leaves for the city of dwarves along with a few goblins and wolves. A goblin named Gobta, who has been to Dworgen before, is acting as Rimuru's guide, while Rigger and 2 other goblins are his guards. At night he asks Gobta about the Dwarven Kingdom, and he tells him that it is a technologically advanced modified cave system where dwarves, humans, elves, and other races live together. It seems that Rimuru has a type, and as soon as he hears about elves, he cannot focus on anything else Gobta is saying. Dwarven was a city with free trade, and even monsters could enter it. The king had absolutely banned fighting inside the gates, and a strong military force could ensure that law and order were maintained. The journey takes only 3 days on Wolfback, and as they reach the gate of Dworgen, Rimuru is only thinking about the beautiful elves instead of dwarf artisans. Well, men will be men. He decides to go to the city with only Gobta as his companion and joins the long coup. 2 human thugs come looking for trouble, and they plan to bully what they think is a team of a weak goblin and a slime. Rimuru tells them that he was a kind person or slime. He was willing to let them go away peacefully. But the thugs are grossly underestimating him and calling him a weak, pitiful monster. That leaves Rimuru with no choice but to use his mimic skill and turn into a Tempest Star wolf like Ranga but larger. The thugs and their companions attack him, but the tough skin of the wolf is impervious to their pathetic attacks. Now it is Rimuru's turn, and he roars using the skill Menace. but he overdoses it, and Alexa gives him a report about how many people ran away and how many soiled their pants, just like my friend I have not seen since that fateful day in high school. But that was still a crime, and the guards threw them in jail. Gapta is in deep slumber as the head guard tells Rimuru that since this was their first offense, and they did not start the fight, he will be free soon. But then a guard comes and informs him of an urgent situation in the mines where a monster has appeared and some craftsmen are injured and stuck inside. On top of that, they lack healing potions to treat them. But Rimuru comes to their rescue and gives them the healing potion he extracted from the plants in the cave. The head guard is good friends with the injured dwarves and has no choice but to trust the slime's words and his secretions. He runs to aid his friends with the healing potion, and Rimuru plays with his steel threads to pass time, eventually hanging the sleeping Gapta upside down. The guard comes back at night and has saved all 3 dwarves that were injured. They thank him, and soon the head guard lets Rimuru go. As a payment, the head guard hears him out and decides to introduce him to a skilled blacksmith who can help him. He takes him through the magic steampunk city, filled with amazing works of art, and leads him to the master weaponsmith Kaijin, who is also the guard's elder brother. And coincidentally, Rimuru finds the 3 dwarf brothers he saved yesterday. They are Garm2, and Egi, who work under Kaijin. They tell the story of how the slime's medicine saved them, and their boss is also very grateful to Rimuru. He hears his request to give him some artisans for his village, but unfortunately, he has an impossible order to fulfill and can't spare any manpower. There is a possibility of war, and a minister has ordered him to deliver 20 magic longswords by the end of the week. Kaijin wanted to refuse, but the minister named Vesta taunted his pride, and he could not let that slide. And this reminds Rimuru of his own boss and his previous life. Apart from not having enough time, the master blacksmith lacks enough raw material, the magistone ore. And if he can't deliver the swords, he might lose his license. Rimuru realizes that the magistone ore was the same thing he gobbled up in the cave. He laughs and spits it out, telling Kaijin to use that, and it was not just ore, but refined magisteel. The dwarf asks for the price of this precious resource, and all Rimuru wants is for him to send some skilled artisans to their village and teach them important things. If that is all, the dwarves can get to work, as they still have 19 more swords to make. But then Rimuru gets an idea. He asks to check the longsword Kaijin has already made. It's a wonderful glowing blade that can reflect a user's magic affinity, and Rimuru says he wants to borrow it for a bit. He gobbles it up and asks Alexa to analyze this sword and mass-produce copies using the minerals in his stomach. And just like that, he makes 20 Xerox copies of the sword, which is pretty much how students do their assignments in college. Since Kaijin's problem is solved, he throws a party, especially for Rimuru, who did all the work. He is hesitant, but only until the dwarves tell him that they are going to a bar where all the servers are pretty elves. There is no way Rimuru can refuse this chance, and he hops on the plan. At the bar, he is mesmerized by the beautiful elves, who also find him cute and fight amongst themselves to hug him. Rimuru got that slime riz, and he gets to relax against some soft and bouncy pillows, and this is the closest he's ever been to a girl. He cannot control his happiness and thinks that this is paradise. He wants this moment to last forever. The party carries on, and one elf lady tells Rimuru that she is quite skilled at fortune reading, and another suggests that they should find the one he is destined to be with. Rimuru wonders if his soulmate is going to be human or slime, and the crystal ball shows him a Japanese-looking woman with a bunch of kids, and it looks like our hero is going to become a stepfather to all of them. But then a party pooper who goes by the name of Vesta comes into the bar. He was the same minister who gave Kaijin the impossible order, and he is here to taunt him about it. He is a total Karen, and it seems that he gave that order just because he was not on good terms with the blacksmith. On top of that, he wants to talk to the manager about why they are allowing a lowly slime into their fine establishment. Rimuru is annoyed, but he doesn't want to mess up with a person in power. But Kaijin has his back, and he also has some personal issues with the male Karen. He punches him hard and knocks him out, but now Rimuru is worried about the outcome. Kaijin already has an idea. He thinks he is about to be exiled and decides to become one of the artisans that Rimuru will take back to his village. He is arrested by his own brother, and both of them seem way too casual about something that is going to create big headlines tomorrow. They are put in jail, and Gapta is still sleeping. I wonder how many hours till he breaks the world record. Kaijin and his accomplices will go on trial, but he just laughs it off, saying that they will get free with a fine. Kaijin tells his story that he and the male Karen go way back. He once used to serve as a knight commander under the king, and Karen was his deputy. He was jealous of him. And when one of his ambitious projects failed, he put all responsibility on Kaijin and even gave fake testimonials to make him quit his job. Even after this, the blacksmith has no hard feelings and thinks that he is not an evil person. But keeping the past aside, he signs a verbal contract with Rimuru, and his underlings also decide to follow him. The day of the trial comes, and they are presented before the hero king of dwarves, Gazel Dwargo, who was respected for being a brave and noble warrior. Cajun and his friends are assigned a public attorney, but he is already bought out by Karen and sabotages their case without shame. Rimuru thinks that they better call Saul. The judge decides their punishment is forced labor in the mines, and Rimuru thinks that is really unfair. But then the king speaks to Kaijin and asks him if he would be interested in joining as a knight again. But he refuses, saying that he has already signed a contract that he will not break even if the king orders him. The king respects the master blacksmith and therefore changes the verdict to something that will only work out in his favor. He exiles Kaijin and his comrades, but doing that makes him sad too. And so Kaijin and the dwarf brothers are exiled, and they head out with Rimuru to the goblin village. But wait, Rimuru, I think you are forgetting something. It has been a few weeks since Rimuru returned from Dworgen with Kaijin and his group, who are now hard at work developing the goblin village. Kaijin is a blacksmith, Garm is an armorsmith. Garm too is skilled in fine crafts, and Eggy is an architect. Along with that, Rimuru was welcomed by 500 more goblins who had heard about him and gathered here for his protection. He initially wanted to turn them back, but when he asked Alexa, she told him that in the fight for dominance between the stronger species like orcs, ogres, and lizardmen, the goblins would be exterminated. So he took pity on them, took them all in, named them, and then slept for 3 more days to recover his energy. Also, Gapta became a teacher on how to summon wolves from the shadows. Because Rimuru left him hanging in the prison cell, he focused very hard, summoned his wolf, freed himself, and safely joined Rimuru on his way home. And Rigger got promoted to Goblin King with other goblin lords under him. And that somehow made him even more muscular and macho. He is there to inform Rimuru about some intruders in the village. They were humans and most probably scouts for some powerful nation looking to expand its boundaries. But it turns out to be a party that opened the door of the cave for Rimuru in episode 2. And there is also a masked woman with them who is the only capable fighter in the group and takes out the ant monsters, chasing after them using her sword skills and fire magic. But she gets a sudden bout of weakness as the last remaining ant is about to attack her, and Rimuru comes to her rescue and fries the ant using his new move, Black Lightning. The woman's mask flies off, and Rimuru finds she is the one he saw in the crystal ball. She is his soulmate Shizu, a skilled warrior who does things at her own pace. Even though the adventurers are initially taken aback by a talking slime, they go to his village where they enjoy Rigard's hospitality. But as he introduces the slime as the master of the goblins, shocking the adventurers, Rimuru takes this chance to crack a joke that only Shizu gets because it is a reference from the real world. They thank him and introduce themselves. The average-looking guy, let's call him Joe, is the warrior and the party leader. The blonde girl, Erin, is the wizard. And the third person looks really lazy, so we'll call him Sloth. Joe tells Rimuru about the nearby kingdom of Bloomin, which was anxious because Veldora disappeared, so their guild master sent them here to investigate the great forest of Jura. He overshares quite a bit, but Rimuru is grateful for that information, and he also learns that neither the guild nor the kingdom should have any problem with them developing their own territory. It is nice to have guests, so Rimuru tells them to stay the night. In the evening, he finds Shizu alone and thinks that is the perfect chance to ask her out on a date. They start talking and he finds out that she is really from Japan and was summoned here during World War II when she was escaping with her mother from the air bombings. Rimuru says that's sad. Alexa played Despacito. No, he really does not. He tells Alexa that he wants to do something to cheer her up. He uses thought communication and shows her how Japan has developed since the Second World War. She is really happy, but then she gets another stroke and puts her mask back on. Before Rimuru can ask anything, Kaijin comes to take him for some important consultation and teases him all the way. The next morning, Rimuru finds Shizu at the same spot as yesterday and asks her if she likes their village and says that she is welcome to stay here as long as she likes. But she really has to go on a journey to find the man who summoned her and ask him some questions. Other than that, she might cause the villagers many difficulties they will have no idea how to deal with. Rimuru and others are waiting to bid them farewell, but the girls take much longer to get ready than the guys. Some things do not change no matter which world you go into, huh? But then Shizu starts behaving strangely as the strokes she suffers get more intense. She groans and writhes in pain, and then her mask cracks, releasing something powerful concealed inside her. A pillar of fire creates smoke clouds that cover the entire sky, and Shizu starts levitating like she's being possessed by a ghost, and then she explodes and strong flames surround her. Only now do the adventurers realize that her real name is Shizu Aizawa, a hero famous as the Conqueror of Flames. She was ever peaked 50 years ago and was supposed to be retired. So our hero fell for a grandmother, but jokes aside, it appears as if she can no longer control her flames, so Rimuru tells Rigard and Rieger to evacuate the villagers. He also orders Ranga to be on standby as they are going to fight soon. As her mask finally falls, Shizu loses the last bit of sanity she was holding on to and transforms into Ifrit, the greater fire spirit that was actually the source of her power. The adventurers think that this is their end, and they have good reason to believe that. Ifrit summons 3 flying salamanders, and they burn down the village that Rimuru and his friends had just built. He tells the adventurers to run away too, but they stand proud in front of danger, willing to put their lives on the line to save their friend and the legendary hero Shizu from the spirit possessing her. Before the fighting begins, Rimuru asks Ifrit what he wants, but he is the type to talk with his fists and attacks him. He tries to counterattack, but his water blade evaporates even before it touches him. The adventurers are holding their own against 1 salamander, and Rimuru summons Ranga as he tries to dodge the remaining 2 and take them down. His water blade is useless, and using larger amounts of water could cause a huge steam explosion that would destroy the surrounding areas along with his enemies, so that is out of consideration. But he notices that Aaron's icicle lance is damaging the salamanders, and Alexa tells him that magic attacks are effective against spirits. Rimuru has an idea, and he asks Aaron to shoot an icicle at him. She is hesitant but does as he says, and then Rimuru devours the icicle, and Alice sees it and gains the ability to use it. He goes 1 step ahead and evolves the attack into an icicle shotgun, taking the 2 salamanders down in 1 powerful move. The remaining salamander decides to become a suicide bomber and blows himself up in front of the adventurers, and Joe somehow blocks that attack from harming his friends. But now they are all out of commission, and Rimuru orders Ranga to take them to safety. Now that Rimuru is alone with Ifrit, he can fight without holding back. The fire spirit starts off by summoning flame clones and creating a lava field around Rimuru to melt him. He gets rid of the clones using an icicle shotgun, but he is already standing in Ifrit's trap, who uses the attack flare circle. That is a powerful attack, and Rimuru panics, thinking that his short and wonderful life as a slime is going to end soon. But he's not getting any damage, and he asks Alexa what's happening. She tells him that he has temperature fluctuation resistance, so all fire attacks are automatically nullified. Well, the tables have turned now, and Rimuru traps Ifrit using his steel threads that are magically fireproof. He taunts the fire spirit, saying that he underestimated him and that all of his attacks are useless against him. He decides to end the battle for good using his unique skill, Predator, and swallows him whole, effectively separating him from Shizu. And inside Rimuru's belly, Ifrit is terrified to meet Vel, who wants to be his next opponent. Shizu has become too weak after what happened earlier, and now Rimuru is by her side as she is resting. She thanks him for saving her and for stopping her from harming people she loved, and so she wants to tell him her story so that people can remember how she lived. She starts from the day when her village was on fire, and she was running away with her mother, when the flames suddenly surrounded her and she found herself in front of the demon lord Leon, a powerful man with a cold and cruel gaze. He thought she was dead and deemed her a failed experiment. But seeing she was still alive despite suffering third degree burns, he thought she had compatibility with fire. And so he summoned Ifrit and made him possess the girl's body. Leon immediately got to test his new weapon as a foolish birdman dared attack him to become a demon lord himself. On his command, Ifrit took control over Shizu's body and burned the bird till no traces of it remained. Leon was impressed and decided to change her name from Shizu to Shizu, and she became his loyal aide, not that she had much choice in the matter. She also had a friend in the demon lord's residence, a fellow summon like herself, and they found and adopted a golden fox cub. Things were going smoothly until one day her friend decided to take the fox pup into the residence, and he growled at Leon. Thinking of the pup as a threat, Ifrit took control over Shizu, and she turned the pup as well as her friend into ash. And when she realized what she had just done, the little girl was scared for life. But she continued serving the demon lord as his closest aide for years until one day the hero attacked and Leon fled, leaving Shizu as the rear guard. She fought the hero but lost very easily, and even though the hero could kill her easily, she did not do so. Instead, she offered a free therapy session to Shizu and told her that everything was alright now. The emotion she had lost came back to her, and she started crying as the hero decided to adopt her. She also gave Shizu the mask, which was capable of boosting her resistance and even suppressing the spirit of Ifrit inside her. Thanks to the hero, Shizu learned more about this world, and thanks to the mask, she learned to use Ifrit's power to some extent and became a hero herself, while trying to help those in need. But then one day, the hero suddenly disappeared without a trace and just told Shizu that they would definitely meet again someday. To fill the void in her life, Shizu decided to help everyone more and people started calling her the new hero. But after doing so for decades, she grew old and found it difficult to suppress Ifrit, so she retired and became a school teacher for kids from other worlds in the kingdom of Ingrassia. She enjoyed her time teaching the children and lived a peaceful life, and some of her students graduated and went off on their own. with one of them even becoming a grandmaster, the one who oversees every guild in the country. Seeing that her students were already established and because controlling Ifrit is getting even more difficult, Shizu left her job and started her last journey to find the man who summoned her and ask him some questions, and that journey led her here with some fun adventurers. She asks Rimuru his real name and tells him her real name in exchange. And then she asks him for a favor. She wants him to eat her just like he ate her curse. She dislikes this world, but she cannot hate it enough to curse it. And since she does not want to become a part of this world after her death, she wants Rimuru to consume her and let her rest inside his stomach. He accepts her request and decides to take up the journey she was leaving uncompleted. Shizu tells him that she probably wanted Leon Cromwell, one of the most powerful demon lords, to acknowledge that she was human. And she wanted to know if there was a way to send the kids summoned here back to their worlds. She is losing strength too quickly, and Rimuru swears on both his names that he will ask these questions to Leon, and as she thanks him, Shizu dies and her body turns old and frail. Rimuru uses his unique skill as a predator on his soulmate and devours her, hoping she dreams happy dreams forever inside his stomach. And in fact, Shizu dreams of reuniting with her mother and living happily back in her own world and time. I'm not crying. The onion-cutting ninjas are in my room again. The adventure party and Rigard come to check up on Shizu, but they are stunned to find someone else there. Rigard and Ranga can easily identify that it was Rimuru, but the adventurers have a hard time believing that the crying blue-haired person who looked exactly like Shizu is the friendly slime. Well, Rimuru tells them the entire story of how Shizu died and asked him to eat her, so you mimicked her form. They are sad, but as Rimuru tells them that Shizu thought of them as too reckless and danger-prone, they start quarreling with each other, and the air of sadness dissipates. The party decides to leave to report what they found in the forest, and they promise to say great things about this place and the slime who ruled over it. But before going, they want Rimuru to turn into his human form again so that they can thank Shizu for him. Also, Rimuru notices that their gear is too shoddy, so he decides to give them a farewell gift. The adventurers are overjoyed to receive armor that is way more expensive than what they can afford. And they are even happier when they find that the artisans behind them were the world-famous three dwarf brothers and the legendary blacksmith Kajin. With that, they depart for their guild and Rimuru pays his final respects to his soulmate. He has promised her that he will find Leon and make him answer those questions, and he is a man of his words. But before doing anything, he needs to find out more about this world and the hierarchy of power here, all while developing his village and growing stronger. After the damage done during the battle with the fire spirit Ifrit, who was housed in Shizu's body, is cleared, the goblins once again start developing their village. Kajin and the three dwarf brothers take the help of goblins to create houses, clothes, and other important things they need, and Rigard and the goblin lords under him work out a plan to govern the village properly. And Rimuru is just enjoying his privileges, as his underlings work well even without his instructions. But there is something he must do, and he makes sure that there is no one around to watch him. Inside his home, he spits out the mask Shizu was wearing after fixing it and promises to keep it safe. And after that, with a naughty laugh, he prepares to transform into his human body using the mimic skill. He transforms into the blue-haired version of Shizu and checks out his control over the body and if his senses are working properly. Although he is grateful to have a human body, he thinks that being slime feels more comfortable now. Then he has a question and asks Alexa if he can use the cloning skill after consuming Ifrit. Alexa replies that he can use all of the fire spirit's skills, and Rimuru immediately summons a clone of himself to find that he looks exactly like Shizu and nothing like himself. He is pretty, but there is a confusion in his mind about being a boy or a girl, and now he thinks having a little peek at his own body won't hurt anyone. But rather than seeing anything good, Rimuru is shocked to find out that he is completely genderless. That was to be expected since he did not have a gender as a slime. Well, he understands his situation, and as he gets dressed, he asks Alexa what the black smoke was when he created his clone. She replies that the black smoke was produced when using magic to create something larger than your size, and that gives Rimuru the idea that he can create an adult version of himself too. So he does that and finds that he's going to look like a handsome man when he grows up. And since he can also freely control his body, he tries to make it masculine and feminine and stops just before seeing anything. Despite being a virgin for 37 years, he still has enough control over himself to not look at an adult female version of himself that would look exactly like Shizu. But this is true gender fluidity. And if any woke dude tries to lecture you about being gender fluid, ask them if they can do this. After that, Rigard comes to give him a report. And as they talk, Rimuru realizes that since he is a human now, he has a sense of taste and can eat delicious food. He has not tasted anything since his reincarnation, and he can only think of the menu as he takes a tour of the village and meets Rigger, Gapta, and the others in the hunting party. He tells them to hunt some tasty animals since he's going to eat with them. In the surprise, Gapta looks at Rimuru's chest and asks if they will also get bigger if he eats a lot. I can't blame him for thinking that, but he gets a roundhouse kick that sends him flying. Rigger promises to discipline Gapta, but he says that there was no shortage of prey as wild beasts were coming towards this area a lot recently. He thinks that this was because of the seasonal migration, but Rimuru has some doubts, and he decides to send Ranga alone with the hunting party in case they need extra power. Meanwhile, he goes to the cave where his friend Veldora was imprisoned to test out the skill Degenerate, which he got by devouring Shizu. By Degenerate, he's not referring to us. It was a skill that could combine different skills to create new ones or disintegrate them into smaller skills. Since it was precious to Shizu, Rimuru decides to make good use of it and receives an extra skill called Black Flame, which seems quite powerful and awesome. Also, the mask she left behind had the power to suppress magic, and when Rimuru puts it on, Alexa tells him that the faint aura he was emitting had been completely suppressed, and he would look just like a human to anyone. But then he receives a telepathic message from Ranga, and it seems that there is an emergency. Rimuru runs to the forest to see Gapta being slashed by a white swordsman, and the other goblins and wolves are already lying unconscious on the floor. There are 2 horned men standing before him. One is red and the other is white, and Rimuru has no idea about them, so we will call them by their color for the time being. As he moves towards the 2 attackers, he finds Ranga fighting 2 others of the same kind. But as he's about to get close for a big attack, a wall of blue fire cast by yet another girl of the same species, who we can call Pink, stops him. Rigger is fighting a woman too, and Rimuru calls him back after he has been united with Ranga. They apologize because they could not take care of the group, but their opponents were strong and one of them could even use magic. The 6 horned people have assembled, and Rigger says that they were ogres, one of the more powerful species that lived in the forest. They do not look like the ogres Rimuru had seen in movies and games. They look more sophisticated and even had Japanese swords with them. He tries to top at them, believing that there is no need to fight. The ogres were stronger than the goblins, yet neither Gapta nor Rigger were fatally wounded, and the rest of the group was just put to sleep with magic. But as he is thinking about rationally sorting this out, the ogres start cursing him, calling him a demon and asking him to reveal his true self. Their prince and leader, Red, is especially aggressive and says that no normal human could enslave so many monsters, and his real identity was already given away by his mask. Rimuru wants to explain things, but Red has no plan to listen to him as he is already convinced that he was involved in the recent attack on their village. Now that he has no chance but to fight, Rimuru tells Ranga to take on Pink, a magic user, without killing her, and he will take down the others. Ranga is concerned about going 1 against 5, but Rimuru is confident that he will clutch it. Red is underestimating him. He thinks that he was just a fool who was too confident. He attacks him with all his might, but his sword does not hit Rimuru, who has already moved to face the big guy with the hammer. As the big guy is about to attack him, he uses paralysis breath to send him to sleep. And then the unnamed woman attacks him from behind, and he dodges that attack, only to look back and be distracted by her huge assets. But even then, he uses seal threads to tie her down before the assassin-type guy attacks him. He shatters his sword with his skill Body Armor, and then sends him flying with 1 punch. Now only red and white are remaining, and the old swordsman names every skill Rimuru just used along with the creature he obtained it from and warns Red that he may have more skills. Rimuru thinks that the old dude is a serious problem, but he just wants to talk to them now that they have seen his power, and he says that they should stop fighting. But Red is even more certain now that Rimuru was a friend of the orcs that defeated his people, and he is certain that he was one of the demons involved in that conspiracy. Rimuru tries to clear the confusion with Red, but then suddenly, the old man launches a sneak attack and slashes him, and he is quick enough to lose only an arm instead of his head. The old man got under his magic sense and broke his defenses to cut his arm, but he is still not satisfied with that result. Now Red thinks that they have a clear chance of winning, and he says some nice words that sum up to pride comes before a fall. But Rimuru just picks up his severed hand, absorbs it from one side, and then instantly regenerates what he had lost, asking the ogres if they still think they can win. Red uses his special attack Ogre Flame on him, but Rimuru is fire resistant and walks out of it. He commends the ogres, saying that he underestimated them and will now show a trailer of his strength. He takes off his mask and releases his terrifying aura before showing off his newly found skill, Black Flame. He releases a tornado of black flame, shocking everyone, and the Pink says that the flame was being created from his own power, and the size of the flames tells the size of the man. It is black. Of course, it would be huge. But Rimuru is not satisfied with just this, and he shows them another one of his skills, his black lightning to crush a huge stone. He asks the ogres if they are scared now or if they still want to fight, and Red appears to be nervous now. White asks him to take the princess and run away while he stays back and takes care of this. But Red is the leader and he does not take orders from anyone. He admits that he is no match for Rimuru, but as the leader of the ogres, it is his duty to avenge his fallen people, and so he will fight to death even if he has no chance of winning. Rimuru's plan of intimidating them has backfired, but before Red can do anything stupid, his sister Pink stands in front of him, saying that they might be making a mistake. She explains that this must not be the same demon who was responsible for the fate of their village. He was powerful enough to destroy them all on his own, and he would not need to rely on the orcs to do the dirty work. Red listens to his sister and finally asks Rimuru who he is, and he reveals that he's just a slime. He transforms into his true form, gets on Ranga's back, and then shows the ogres that his mask is not the same as their attackers. The ogres have finally understood their mistake, and Red kneels before Rimuru to apologize. The matter is sorted out, and the slime invites the ogres to come to their village and join the feast they are throwing tonight. They have their reservations, but he replies that since no one was fatally harmed, it was all good. After taking care of his injuries and hunting for the feast, Rimuru headed back to the village with the ogres and the goblins. He asks Red what his name is, and he replies that no one in their group has a name, making Rimuru realize that he easily forgets how monsters don't have names in this world. The party starts at night, and the first dish is presented to Rimuru as the goblins eagerly wait for his reaction. And as he takes a bite from a dish that looks like a kebab, he is greatly pleased and happy. This was the first time he had tasted anything since coming to this world, and he thinks that life is finally worth living now. Everyone is enjoying themselves, and Rigger, and Cajun are sitting with the two main ogres, listening to their sad story. They were attacked by orcs, and by the logic of this world, it was impossible. Orcs were a pig-like species who were much weaker than ogres. It was unthinkable for them to wage war on anyone stronger than them. But they attacked and set the ogre village on fire at night. They had an entire army that was wearing full-plate armor and carrying weapons. There was a powerful masked demon with the orcs, and that is why the ogres fought Rimuru, mistaking him for the demon. The greatest possibility was that the orcs had become allied with the demon lord, and the outcome was that out of 300 ogres, now only 6 remained. Rimuru has also heard of all this, and he comes to the group to ask Red what he plans on doing now. Red can only think of revenge right now and wants to develop his group's strength to find the orcs and the demon, but he has no clue where to begin his search. Rimuru realizes that the leader of the ogres has no plan, and therefore he puts forth a suggestion. He asks them if they would be interested in becoming his subordinates. He plans to provide them food, clothing, and shelter at the very least, but Red asks if allying with them would not put the goblin village at risk. Rimuru replies that this was another thing he was thinking about. If thousands of orcs were attacking villages, it was possible that they would come to their village sooner or later. That is why increasing their numbers and fighting strength was key to the survival of the village, and Rimuru plans to fight alongside the ogres in case of any danger. Red says that he will need some time to think about it and heads into the forest to find the correct answer, as his clan's fate depends on his choice. The next morning, he visits Rimuru's house and says that ogres are a warring species that have no problem working for someone stronger, and on the condition that they will be free to choose their path after defeating the leader of the orcs. Red decides to take up Rimuru's offer and become his subordinate. Rimuru also thinks that Red was putting himself in a tough spot by making this decision, and he wants to make sure that he does not regret it. So he calls all the ogres to his room so that he can give them names that will be proof that they are his subordinates. The ogres are shocked that he was going to name them all, and even as the ogre princess explains that there was a risk involved in naming stronger monsters, Rimuru does not heed her warning. He smugly thinks that he already knows about the depletion of magic, but since there were only 6 of them this time, there would be no problem. I am pretty sure that he's going to suffer again, just from the amount of confidence he has. Red gratefully agrees to get named by the Great Slime, and the group has no objection. Rimuru starts the naming process, and the next thing he hears is the voice of 2 girls quarreling about taking care of him. He opens his eyes and finds that 2 small slimes are resting on his slime body. He is still half asleep and asks the girls who they are while trying to figure out what happened. Suddenly, the ogre prince greets him and informs him that he has evolved into a Kijin after being named Benamaro. Now Rimuru remembers that he fell unconscious just as he named the ogres, asks Alexa about Kijins, and finds out that they were a rare subspecies born among the ogres. That is good news, and Rimuru finds that Ben, who was formerly Red, looks smaller but more powerful now. The ogre princess Pink is now named Shuna, and he finds that she has grown him cuter. The ogre woman holding him is Cheyenne, and he already likes 2 big things about her personality. Behind Ben is the old white man who cut off Rimuru's hand. His name is Hakaru. He also looks quite younger now. And then there is Sui, the assassin. Alexa tells Rimuru that naming a superior monster consumes an even larger amount of magic, and that is why he collapsed after naming just 6 ogres. The 6th ogre, Kuro, had already become Kaijin's apprentice, and when he comes in to greet Rimuru, our hero is relieved to see that he is the only normal-looking guy among all the attractive faces. And that is the thing that resonates with Rimuru, who once used to look quite average too. Rimuru is watching as Haku trains the young goblins in swordsmanship, but he's a tough coach who beats the living daylights out of his students, and this was all thanks to Gapta, who excitedly said that he wanted to learn how to use a sword. He is also discussing with Ben about the Orc Lord, a unique monster born among the orcs once every few centuries. This might be a bit of an exaggeration, but it was said that an Orc Lord could command the fear of his allies, making him the most effective leader. And since the orcs that attacked his village did not care about the deaths of their allies, Ben is convinced that an Orc Lord was leading them. Rimuru asks if there could be any other reason for them being attacked, and Ben replies that a few months ago, a shady demon appeared in their village and offered to name him. But it looked like a scam, so he refused the demon, telling him to double it and give it to the next person. The masked demon left the village after cursing him, and Ben thinks that the demon may be settling a grudge against him, but he could not have taken the name from any unreliable master. Rimuru is flattered and asks the name of the demon, but Ben does not even remember it, and Sue comes out of the shadows to say that it was Gelmud. After giving it some thought, Rimuru remembers that Gelmud was the demon that gave Rigger's brother his name. He wonders if this Gelmud guy just roams around the world trying to give names to monsters, that he feels that it is some weird hobby. Sue is here with some important news about spotting lizardmen, another of the stronger species living in the marshy areas of the forest. He had seen them go to the nearby goblin village for negotiations, and he feels that they may come here too. After a few days of joining under him, the ogres have become well ingrained in the system of the village. Shumen is telling the dwarf brothers the process of making silk from hell moths when Shin walks in carrying Rimuru inside their workshop. She had declared herself his secretary, and since she looked the part, Rimuru let her keep the job. But it might have created a rift between the two Kijin beauties, both of whom want to spend a lot of time with Rimuru. They practically stretch him like a ball of pizza dough as Garm and his brothers watch 2 women fight over a man who is not even from the same species as them. But he somehow manages to satisfy both of them at once. That's what she said. Cheyenne takes Rimuru to the dining hall where Ben and friends are already sitting. And as they hear that Cheyenne has prepared dinner for him, some past traumas become fresh in their minds, and Sue just runs away, saying that he has to scout the nearby areas. Rimuru takes his human form, and seeing Ben sweat, he wonders if Cheyenne is not good at cooking despite looking capable. And as she brings out her dish, which looks like it came from a sewer, he realizes that he was right. Wait a minute, guys. I feel like throwing up after seeing that. Shen insists Rimuru start eating immediately, and Ben does not even look towards him, while Haku has completely erased his presence so that he's not even seen. And as he takes a spoonful thinking that at least he will not die from this, he imagines the horrible excuse for cooking smiling at him. He's sweating and asks Alexa for help, and she tells him to close his eyes and thrust the spoon to his right if he does not want to die. Rimuru does what he is told and thrusts the spoon to his right, only to find that he put it in Gapta's mouth, who coincidentally happened to be near him. The dish is as horrible as it looks, and Gapta chokes, squirms in pain, turns purple, and faints as his mouth foams. Rest in peace, little goblin. And now, Rimuru tells Cheyenne that the next time she makes food, she must get Ben to taste it and approve it. And he hopes that the overleader does a good job so that they suffer no more casualties like Gapta. I would like to see Gordon Ramsay taste her cooking and give his honest views. That he goes to check up on Kaijin and his Kijin apprentice, but they are too busy talking about their job that he gets no time to get into their conversation. But then, River comes and rescues Rimuru as he tells him about an envoy of the lizardmen who had come to see him, and the evolved ogres join him on the way. As Rimuru reaches the lizardmen outside their village, they begin their military routine and announce the entry of their leader, a young, proud, flashy, and rather gullible lizardman named Gabiru. He gives out what he thinks is an impressive intro, and says that the goblins will now have the honor to work under him, a named lizardman and the future chief of his tribe. Rimuru is annoyed, and Cheyenne is even more annoying than him and squeezes him hard. He tells her to stop, but if I were in his position, I would enjoy it until the moment it passed out. Rigurd says that this request was too sudden, but Gabe acts arrogant as he tells them about the threat of the orc army invading the forest. He says that he would protect the weaklings from them, that he sees the macho Rigurd, 2 awesome-looking ogres, and the voluptuous beauty, which has the greatest impact on him. Gabe talks with his soldiers, and they don't think that there is a goblin or weakling in the village. Rimuru thinks that allying with the lizardmen would be beneficial to both of them. But looking at the vain envoy, he is starting to have doubts. Having friends like him is even worse than having powerful enemies. Now Gabe changes his strategy and says that he has heard of the goblins who tamed the dire wolves, and he would make them officers in his army. Cheyenne is really irritated now, and Ben smiles as he seeks Rimuru's permission to kill the silly reptiles. Rimuru somehow stops him from getting violent and tells the lizardmen that he was the one who made the wolves into their allies. Gabe laughs, saying that it was a funny joke, and Rimuru summons Ranga to show the arrogant lizard the truth. Ranga appears in his real size and uses his skill of menace to terrify the lizards, and Ben asks if he was always that big. That's what she said. Rimuru replies that the real size is more useful in cases like this when intimidating idiots. But it seems like Gabe has some guts after all. He does not even flinch on seeing Ranga and quite politely praises his beautiful eyes and soft fur. He tells the wolf that it was a magnificent beast, but it was a pity that he was fooled by slime and made into a slave. And he says that he will defeat the clever and evil slime and free the wolf to make him an ally. His men start cheering him on, and he enjoys his 15 seconds of fame as Ranga grows furious that some random lizard insulted his master. He is about to eat some lizard meat when Gapta suddenly comes frolicking over to their place. I thought he was dead, and so did Rimuru and others. And Gapta just casually tells them that of course he was alive. Alexa analyzes him and tells Rimuru that to neutralize the effect of Cheyenne's cooking, the goblin gained the poison resistance skill, and the slime is impressed because even he does not have poison resistance. Gapta is flattered, but he has no time to boast as Ranga picks him up and puts him in front of Gabe, saying that if he could defeat him, he would consider his offer. Rimuru is impressed and thinks that the wolf did the right thing. If he fought himself, the poor lizard would die instantly. Gabe is overconfident and taunts Rimuru, who tells Gapta to give it his all. If he wins, he will get a custom-made weapon, and if he loses, he will have to eat Shen's cooking. Well, the punishment is more motivating than the reward, and Gapta goes Super Saiyan to avoid it. The warriors get ready to fight, and Gabe says that lizardmen are descendants of dragons, and they will never lose to mere hobgoblins. But while he talks, Gapta does not waste a moment to launch his spear at him. Gabe barely dodges the spear and counterattacks, but the goblin is nowhere to be found. And as the lizard wonders where he went, Gapta emerges from his shadow and kicks the back of his neck, knocking him out. I didn't see that coming, but neither did the lizard nor Rimuru. While others give him the treatment a champion deserves, Rimuru thinks that Gapta might be a genius of sorts. To tell the truth, he never hoped the goblin would win. He expected him to be thrashed, and then the ogres and Rigurd would beat the snot out of the lizards. But everyone else was confident that he would win, and Rimuru decides to pretend that he expected this too. The lizards have been stunned ever since Gapta defeated their leader, and Rimuru tells them that they would help them fight against the orcs, that they were not going to serve under anyone. And as the lizards run away, they say that they will be back. Back for what? For more humiliation? Now Rimuru also has to think of what their plan would be now, and it seems he has to do it sooner than expected. Stowe saw an army of 200,000 orcs moving along the nearby river, and he estimates that they were going to attack the lizardmen's territory soon. Rimuru is surprised by the large number and asks his underlings what the orcs' motive could be. Cajun says that orcs were a pretty dumb species, and it was possible that someone else was pulling the strings behind this invasion. Rimuru agrees, saying that there could be a demon lord behind this, and the prime suspect is the demon named Gelmud, who had beef with the ogres. He himself wants it to be a demon lord so that he can get closer to the man who made his dear Shizu suffer. Ben replies that even if there is no demon lord backing the orcs, they at least have an orc lord uniting and leading them. Only such a legendary monster could lead such a large army of orcs. But as they are in the middle of the discussion, Sue receives a report from one of his clones saying that a dryad wanted to meet with him. Although Rimuru was initially not planning to meet with anyone, as soon as he heard about a dryad, he stopped using his brain to think. He had seen the dryads, who were like tree spirits in many games and comics, and he did not waste a single moment to invite her in. A flower sprouts in the middle of the table, and from that comes out a pretty dryad lady named Tranny, a 1,000-year-old introverted forest spirit who has not met any humans for a long time. She is also quite polite and cordial and greets Rimuru and his underlings, apologizing for the sudden visit. She has come here with a request. She wants Rimuru to defeat the Orc Lord. She descends gracefully from the table, and Rimuru is a little hesitant to accept her request. But then Ben comes ahead and tells the Dryad that she was making quite a selfish request for a complete stranger. He asks her why she is here, telling her that there are other species that are much stronger than goblins. Trey says that she knows it and would have gone to the Ogre village if all of them were alive. But even then, she could not ignore the existence of Rimuru, who was probably the strongest being in the entire forest region right now. She says that if the settlement of Dryads is attacked by the Orc Lord, they will have no means to defend themselves on their own, which is why she has come to ask for a request from someone strong. Rimuru replies that they only had a theory about the Orc Lord being born, but the Dryads know everything that happens inside the forest, and thus Trey can confirm that there is an Orc Lord. Rimuru tells her that he will give his answer after properly considering everything and gathering more information, and Trey has no issues with that. She may really not be as introverted as I initially thought, because she's really comfortable at the meeting table, and Rigard and Cajun are anxious sitting next to her. Rimuru continues the meeting and asks if anyone knows what the orcs could be after, and Shuna has an idea. She asks Sue to tell the table about what he found when he investigated their village, and he replies that he found no corpse there. Not a single ogre or even orc dead body was found. And that was how the orcs were keeping their gigantic army fed. Rimuru does not understand what they meant, and Trey says that it was the unique skill of the Orc Lord, Starved. The effect of the unique skill reached all the orcs under the Lord, and like locusts, they devoured anything they found. They could not spare even their own fallen comrades. And on top of that, they gained the strength and abilities of everything they consumed and grew more powerful the more they ate. Starve was similar to Rimuru's unique skill, Predator, but it came with a side effect. The orcs were always hungry and could never feel full, and they mindlessly moved ahead, devouring everything and destroying entire ecosystems. Rimuru realizes that the orcs were not hunting for dominance, but for power, and he declares that his village is not safe at this rate. They had hobgoblins, Cajuns, and Tempest wolves, all of whom were meals the power-hungry orcs could not resist, and Ben remarks that the strongest slime in the world would be more appetizing to the orcs than anything else. Trey has more to tell him. She says that there was a certain demon who worked under a demon lord and was helping the orcs, and it was someone Rimuru and his friends were interested in. He thinks that Trey was much more shrewd and tactful than she looked, and now she again requests that he defeat the Orc Lord on her behalf. Rimuru is not sure, and he asks Alexa what she thinks of the Dryad. Alexa says that the Dryads were the guardians of the forest and were known to pass divine judgment on villains, so Trey can be trusted. As he's thinking about fighting the 200,000 orcs, Cheyenne suddenly hugs him and says that of course he was going to fight and no Orc Lord could match their master. Rimuru is a bit annoyed, but he was thinking of the same thing too. He declares that they will fight against the orcs, and all of his underlings are ready to join him. But after acting so cool, he feels nervous, thinking about what would happen if they lost. He suggests that they form an alliance with the Lizardmen, but their representative looked like an idiot they could not rely on. He wants to talk to someone more responsible, and Sue asks for his permission to talk with the chief of the Lizardmen on his behalf. Seeing the handsome man so confident, Rimuru has a moment of doubt about which gender he likes, but then he calms his emotions and orders Sue to carry on with his plan. The fight was going to take place in the marshlands, and it was vital to receive help from Lizardmen if they were fighting in their territory. And as Sue leaves, Rimuru hopes that the chief of Lizardmen is not an idiot. And luckily, the chief of the Lizardmen is a proud, wise, and charismatic leader who is Gabe's father. He is accompanied by his daughter, who is also the captain of the Royal Guards, when Sue intrudes on their property, but since he is too strong for them to handle and comes in peace, the chief respectfully allows him to state the message he was carrying. Sue tells the lizard chief about his master, Rimuru Tempest, and how he was going to kill the Orc Lord on the personal request of the Dryad, and for that, he wanted to form an alliance with the lizards. While the wise king takes him seriously, one of the guards arrogantly insults Rimuru, and Sue is ready to behead him. But the chief apologizes and lets his soldier live. He knows that a person who could name an ogre and cause him to evolve was no ordinary being, and thus agrees to form an alliance after personally meeting Rimuru. Sue says that this was fine, and he tells the lizard chief that they will meet him here in 1 week, and asks him not to attack the orcs till then. The chief understands and places his faith in Rimuru without knowing him, but his plan is foiled when Gabe returns home after being encouraged by a demon named Laplace to take the position of leader from his old dad, who has lost his touch. And being really gullible, Gabe does just that, placing his dad and sister under arrest and deciding to wage war against the orcs as the leader of the Lizardmen. But the problem is that he has no idea about the real horror of the Orc Lord's power. Rimuru and his team ride to the marshlands to aid the Lizardmen in the war against the orcs. Among his companions are Ben, Haku, Cheyenne, Sue, and Ranga, as well as the Goblin Riders with Gapta as their captain. They have left Rigard and others back at the village to flee in case they lose. As they are riding, Sue informs Rimuru that he has spotted the captain of the Lizardman Chief's guards fighting against a group of orcs, and he asks him for instructions. Rimuru asks him if he can win, and the handsome Kidget has no doubt about his ability, so he gets the go-ahead. Rimuru tells his fellow riders that they are going to join Sue in battle, but by the time they reach the site, all the orcs are dead, and he is tending to the lizard women. She is seriously injured, but Rimuru heals her using his magic potions and then introduces himself. As soon as she hears his name, the lizard girl bows before him, begging to save her father and her brother Gabe. She explains that Gabe had staged a rebellion, taken the throne of the chief, and was now fighting an all-out war against the orcs. But he was an idiot with half-knowledge who did not even know about the true power of the Orc Lord. She begs Rimuru for help, and Cheyenne gets to her first, saying that since she recognized how great their master was, she definitely had potential. And before Rimuru gets a chance to say anything, she's already accepted the job request on his behalf like a secretary would. He acknowledges the chief's daughter as his official representative and forms an alliance with her on the spot. Rimuru orders Sue to rescue the lizardman chief, and it seems that the handsome ninja has more skills that can make his boss jealous. With that, Rimuru rides off with the rest of his soldiers to the battlefield, where Gabe turns out to be a surprisingly good leader. He uses a guerrilla warfare technique where the lizardmen take advantage of their superior mobility in the marshlands and ambush the orcs. But as he orders his soldiers to return, Gabe is horrified at the sight of orcs eating their dead comrades. That increases their strength, and soon they are able to drag down the lizardman and consume him too. Gabe orders his men to immediately retreat, but they are surrounded on all sides by the orcs. The orcs are moving really fast now, and then he notices that they have webbed feet and scales just like lizards. The other lizard soldiers report that this change happened just after they ate the lizard soldier, and now Gabe understands the hard situation he is in. But like a good commander, he takes charge of his army and tells them to maintain a close formation while keeping the goblins that had allied with them in the center. He ignites the confidence of his soldiers even as the menacing horde of orcs comes closer. But then they all stop, and a huge armored orc with a terrifying aura steps in front of them. Gabe thinks that he is the Orc Lord, and he challenges him to a duel. But the orc replies that he is only an orc general and far inferior to the Orc Lord in terms of strength. Now the lizard chief is nervous as he wonders what kind of monster the Orc Lord would be, but he still proudly takes up the offer to face the general one-on-one. He is weaker than the orc general, but still manages to fight well with the help of his father's trident, the Vortex Spear. But the orc has a far more terrifying skill set than him, and Gabe barely dodges his attack. His men cheer him on, and Gabe fights back with terrifying intensity, managing to surprise the orc general, but still failing to land a decisive blow. Now he has lost all his strength, and as he is on the ground, the orc general strikes down to kill him. But Gabe's life is saved by Gobta, who comes and fends off the attack of the orc. Gabe thinks that Gobta is actually the leader of the hobgoblin village, as he still cannot accept that he lost to just an ordinary hobgoblin. Gobta thinks that the lizard has gone crazy, but there are more important things to deal with now. He and Ranga are here to help the lizardmen fight against the orcs on Rimuru's border. The orc general is arrogant and tells them that if they stand in his way, he will take them out, but before he even completes his sentence, giant explosions of black flame rattle the battlefield and defeat thousands of orcs at once. That was Ben's doing. He was getting revenge on the pigs for destroying their village. And Rimuru is just watching his underlings create havoc from the sky and getting amazed at the power they have thanks to him. The orc general thinks that no matter who came to help the lizards, they were no match for the orcs. And in his confidence, he makes the mistake of insulting Rimuru before Ranga, who decides to show the orcs his real power. He unleashes his wide-range attack, a powerful thunderstorm called the Death Storm, showing why he was a Tempest Wolf. Black tornadoes pick up and fling the orcs to their deaths, and the orc general is turned into dust with one hit of black lightning. And then Ranga evolves into a Tempest Star Wolf and gets an additional horn. He taunts the orcs that this is the power of his master, when they dare to mock, but there is only dust and ash in front of him. On the other locations in the battlefield, Ben is spamming the giant attacks like he has limitless magic, and Haku is slashing his way through the hordes of orcs like he's mowing his lawn on a Sunday morning. And with just one swing of her sword, Cheyenne creates a small canyon on the battlefield and cheerfully waves to Rimuru, hoping he likes it. Rimuru thinks that having the Kijins by his side was a great advantage, and he wonders what Sue is doing. He has also completed his mission and rescued the lizard chief and killed all the orcs in his way, and the way he does it makes every lizard's jaw drop. He even threatens the man behind the orcs, who is watching him through a crystal ball, that after his pig servants are done, he will be next. Now that most of the orcs have been killed, a final boss comes out, and Rimuru identifies him from a distance. The Orc Lord is as big as the generals, and his catchphrase is, "I'm hungry. If you are hungry, grab a Snicker, my man." And as Rimuru puts on his magic-suppressing mask, he swears to end the Orc Lord quickly. But as he prepares to get down, he hears a missile coming towards him and dodges it. It was not a missile. It was a person, the demon Gelmud, who wears a cheat-plagued doctor mask and is like a frustrated elementary school teacher whose students don't listen to him. He lashes out at Rimuru, asking him and his underlings how they dared disrupt his plans and stop the birth of a new demon lord that he could control. He spent all of his time roaming the forest, giving names to all kinds of monsters and sowing the seeds of becoming a demon lord in them so that he could create the ultimate pawn. The Kijins are furious that this was the reason Gelman approached them and later destroyed their village. But before they can confront him, Gabe exclaims upon seeing the guy who named him. He does not know anything and thinks that Gelman was here to help them. But when the demon calls him an idiot and tells him to get eaten by the Orc Lord already, he's left speechless. Gelman orders the Orc Lord to stop wasting time and gobble up everyone. But the Orc is curious about the whole evolving into a demon lord business. The frustrated demon explains to him that the Orc Lord would turn into an Orc disaster after becoming a demon lord and would rule the forest. That is what he and his boss want. And even though Gelman was told not to interfere with the fight, he thinks he has no choice and attacks Gabe, who survives because his loyal soldiers shield him from the attack. The lizard starts crying at the sacrifice of his friends and Gelman attacks him with an even stronger attack, telling him to become nourishment for the Orc Lord and be helpful once in a while. But Rimuru stands before Gabe and consumes the attack using his predator skill. He then taunts the masked demon, saying that he couldn't kill a fly with that attack. Gabe has finally realized that he is the great and benevolent slime ruler of the hobgoblins and receives healing potions to help his friends. Now, Rimuru decides to face Gelman and ties him with the steel threads. His opinion of Gabe has improved and he hits the demon a few times on his behalf too. Gelman calls himself a superior demon, but after a few hits he changes his arrogant tone and starts threatening Rimuru that his boss will not tolerate this. Rimuru asks him to tell him the name of his boss so he can beat him down too. Gelman has no response to this and runs to the Orc Lord for help. He calls him by his name, Geld, and tells him to help him. The Orc Lord remembers the moment Gelman named him and he slowly starts walking while the demon rejoices, thinking that now his lackey would do the fighting. But instead of that, the Orc Lord kills and eats him to satisfy his hunger. It seems Gelman's plan will succeed after all, as after eating him, Geld transforms into a demon lord just like he wanted. He won, but at what cost? Geld has become the demon lord Orc disaster, and now Rimuru cannot just sit back and watch. He has to kill the Orc before he really brings a disaster upon the forest. But before he can get a taste of battle, the Kijins attack the Orcs to settle their score. Cheyenne attacks first and she is just a decoy for Haku to take the Orc disaster's head. But even that is not enough to take him down as he attaches his head using some mucus-like fluid, and a healing power would put Deadpool and Wolverine to shame. The Kijins have not given up yet, and Sue encloses Geld in a prison of threads, while Ben uses his Hellfire to take him down. And to finish things, Ranga uses his Black Lightning attack and runs out of magic with that. But it seems that even after all those powerful blows, Geld has only been slightly injured. As Rimuru and his subordinates are shocked at this, they witness one of Geld's generals offering his body to him, and he consumes it to gain more power and heal from the burns he just got. He is still not full and uses the attack he got after consuming Gelmans to kill everyone in his sight, but Rimuru consumes it yet again. And then he tells everyone to lead the fight to him now. And even after saying that, he is going to rely on someone else to fight his battle. He tells Alexa to defeat Geld, and she takes over his body, initiating auto-battle mode. So the Great Sage is not only Alexa, but she is also like Iron Man's Jarvis, and it seems she is more capable at fighting than Rimuru, as she dodges the attacks of the Orc disaster, and inflicts a wound on him using the black flame so he does not even regenerate. He never says it too, and he tears off his own arm to regenerate it from his shoulder. Geld gets on the offensive now and attacks Rimuru from all sides, yet thanks to Alexa, he easily devours his attacks and then lets him capture him. That was done to activate the skill Flare Circle he got from Ifrit. That does some damage to Geld, but he quickly achieves immunity to fire attacks, and Rimuru tells Alexa that he will take over the fight now and consoles her so that she does not sulk at him like an upset girlfriend. He then tells Geld that he would have been lucky if he got burned to death, because now he will face an even more terrible death. He says that he has acknowledged the Orc as an enemy and will take him seriously now. Geld laughs, saying that there's nothing he can do and that he's going to be eaten now. But Rimuru tells him that he was going to consume the Orc before it got the chance to consume him. He reveals his true nature as a slime and covers Geld's body, telling him that he was not the only one who had a great hunger. They enter an eating contest where the one who eats his opponent first wins, and it soon becomes a fight between Rimuru's predator and the Orc's healing abilities. Everyone watches as Geld struggles against Rimuru, and as he is being devoured, Rimuru can see his memories of the events that led the Orc here. Before being named, Geld was the chief from an Orc tribe. A severe drought in his region, and to feed starving children, he went so far as to sacrifice his limbs for them because he could grow them again. Even as his eldest son requests that he stop harming himself, the orc leader says that he will always grow back the parts he lost, but the children who were just born should not be left to die. And then he departed for the great forest of Jura to procure any food he could for his starving people. But he starved on the way to the forest, and as he fell unconscious, Gelmud approached him, offering him a name and food. Despite the risk that he was just being used, Geld took his help. And now he tells Rimuru that no matter what, he cannot be consumed for the sake of his own species. But Rimuru has already won the battle outside, and he tells Geld that he has lost and will now be eaten. Geld resists, saying that if he dies, his people will have to bear the burden of his sins. He cannot allow that to happen, and he will take on the entire hunger of his people just so that they do not starve. But Rimuru tells him not to worry. He will devour his sin and those in his people too. Rimuru has completely consumed Geld, and before he is turned into nothingness, he shows the orc a vision of a land of plenty, with the laughter of children being heard in the distance. Geld gets on his knees and weeps as he thanks Rimuru for eating his sins and finally satisfying him. "You have my respect, Mr. Geld." Then, Alexa tells him that all signs of Geld have vanished, and Rimuru releases his giant slime form to turn into a human once again. Just as the orc disaster is eaten, the effect of unique skill, starved, his people vanishes, and they turn into normal orcs once again and stop their invasion. Everyone cheers for Rimuru, and even the orcs are glad that their king has been freed from his curse. Now that they have defeated the common enemy and the condition of their contract is satisfied, Rimuru tells the Kijins that they are free to choose their own path now. But they have grown fond of their master and tell him that they will serve him until their deaths, and it will be the greatest honor of their lives. That's it for this video. Make sure to like and subscribe for more videos and watch this next video on screen.